So, Krypton, ZOD'S Masterpiece, is the prequel book to the entire Kryptonian Epic series. It's released pretty late. It's actually released after Endangered Species. But I spoiled a lot of it. I essentially summarized it in the first part of the Kryptonian Epic, endlessly unfinished, but we have more of it coming, animated epic. The part one of it was all about the fall of Krypton, what happened on that planet. And if you've been following the Kryptonian Epic, there's a lot of stuff there that you can take and draw conclusions about where all this is actually going. Sometimes in the comments of these videos, I've been lucky enough that people actually have theories. They think certain things I said wrong, when in actuality they're setups for twists. They actually have been like watching these, and I really appreciate that because I have so much fun making them, and Endangered Species is crazy and crazy ambitious, but I'm so excited about it. It's really silly. It's incredibly silly, guys. It's also very cool, and the actors in it are very good, so I'm very excited about that. But I wanted to take the burst of energy I have from the espresso martini I had earlier, and I want to dedicate it to a moment in Krypton ZOD'S Masterpiece that's actually, I think, really cool. And that if the Kryptonian Epic was ever dramatized by someone other than me in YouTube videos, I would want to see. And we animated it. David North did a really good job animating the moment in the first part of the animated epic. But I love Jor-El. I love what happens to him. And the thing the animated epic doesn't have are details of the characters. And really what Krypton ZOD'S Masterpiece is about this guy. Well, he's not a guy. He's like a plant alien. I mean, it's not that, oh, why do you have to make Superman's father trans? No, he's not. He's heterosexual, but he's like three different types of heterosexual because they're a whole different type of thing, and who even knows what the hell they are. You know, they pollinate each other. It's weird. They have seed spores, and you get donations of DNA from all of your friends. Basically, anyone can splice with you. Kryptonian DNA, oh, what do you know? The thing I was saying is actually a really important part of the mythology and not just a joke. Kryptonian DNA is extremely malleable. It's very easy for them to genetically alter themselves by interbreeding with each other. That's why there are all different colors of Kryptonians and all different varieties of Kryptonians, is because a Kryptonian parent intentionally pollinates its seed spore with traits it admires. So they basically breed themselves like dogs. So there's all different shapes of Kryptonians with all different face shapes, and different face shapes are associated with different families, not simply because of genetic inheritance, but because they literally chose those as the family's crest or brand. That's why we meet a scientist named Jor-El, who is, I'm going to call him a he just for sake of storytelling, but he's this young guy who's working on interstellar flight, and he's really, 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 really excited because they have this theory that if Kryptonians can leave Krypton, they'll be able to basically spread like flowers or a plant all over the universe. And that is the great dream on Krypton, because currently everything on Krypton is managed by this system called Brainiac. Brainiac is a perfect system that does everything right, although it has one rule, which is you're not supposed to genetically hybridize with other things. In other words, you're not supposed to go outside of Kryptonians. And maybe that's an outdated rule. Maybe they should be able to do whatever they want. But also, it's really dangerous because sometimes Kryptonian DNA, when it hybridizes with certain things, there could be viruses in there or bacteria that could actually be hybridized with you and create like a freaky monster. So it's a rule that makes sense, even though a lot of Kryptonians know that the Kryptonian body is it's like common knowledge that their bodies can't go into space. The acceleration and the pressure of their spacecrafts, it just doesn't work. Their interior systems collapse in zero gravity. It's not good. But then this other scientist, Jax he figured out that we could actually take our eggs and create a system that keeps them alive and launch it into space. So the seed spore would go up, and then whatever planet it landed on, we use this technology that Jax and Jor-El helped him design the lander and the vehicle, and Jax was mainly doing the science. And they designed a vehicle that would go to other worlds, and when it would land, whatever the dominant life form on that planet was, it would scan the planet, and then it would scan the people, and it would fucking create a half Kryptonian, half whatever thing from the DNA of the first people or creatures it saw. And that would allow Kryptonians to basically have satellite colonies all over the universe and do all of these incredible things that they'd always want to do, because they know there are aliens out there, because they discover these green lights in their atmosphere very early on into Brainiac. There are green lights in the atmosphere, and people are like, there's something up there. There's stuff out in the universe. We know, we can see with our telescopes, but we just can't get there. Except for the no genetic hybridization plan of Brainiac, which is this computer controlling everything. It controls your home devices, it controls the locks on your doors, it controls the cops, it controls the paramedics, it controls the government, it controls everything, and it makes everything great. Brainiac's great. It just has this one rule where it's a stickler about no genetic hybridization. So Stickler Brainiac basically is set up to say no to the only available way for Kryptonians to expand into space. Because they tried this thing where they created a gateway into another dimension, they thought, the Phantom Zone. They thought they would do the Wrinkle in Time thing where they poke a hole through time. But they actually poked a hole kind of behind time. They discovered a new physical space in the universe that exists on a level beneath ours. It's not another dimension. It's literally like our reality's basement. Like, it's this big, empty, endless space that has like some floating stuff in it. And it's weird in there. And it has oxygen, which is bizarre. Anyway, so it's just this giant, empty, basically the element oxygen to infinity. Endless void down. That's important because they start using it as a prison. And they start putting people in there who they don't want, because when you go in there, you end up sort of outside of time, so you don't really age. So your experience of time gets warped, and you're kind of in there as like a floating consciousness. So they can stick people in there, and when they get stuck in there, there's no real way to get out unless someone opens a door from the other side. But you can't use that to go anywhere. So this guy Zod, who's an entertainer, he's a guy who performs as there's no militaries on Krypton anymore, but he performs as this old general, and he performs, and Krypton, the celebrities are celebrities. They're entertainers because they're charismatic. There are no politicians. Brainiac does that. Except for this is a celebrity who acts like a politician as his act. And eventually he gets so fucking high on his own supply, he's an egomaniac and evil. He's the worst guy in the Kryptonian Epic. Easy. Like, one of the shittiest, most villainous characters I've ever concocted. I'm very proud of him. But that's why I chose this lighting. But Zod becomes more and more and more beloved by the people. And he talks against Brainiac, and he begins getting high on his own supply and basically being like, I really am a leader of the people. I really should be the most important Kryptonian. So he funds these two scientists, Jor-El and Jack Sawyer, to do this illegal research, to build all this against the law of Brainiac. Brainiac knows he's doing this, but doesn't know what to do, because it's never been put in a situation where someone has like a giant following behind them against Brainiac. It's only ruled for like 100 and so years. Like, it's not a perfect system, and it has these weird inherent biases. Zod gets found out by this reporter who basically says like, hey, you are doing illegal experiments, you're violating everything. And Zod murders him in a back room by surprise after agreeing to an interview. And that's the beginning of Zod's kind of weird. If this was an HBO show, that's where this character goes from like a funny, because Zod, whenever I think of Zod, I think of how he talks. And even though he's this like plant monster, it's like this, I'm Zod, and I'm a fancy boy. And he's just this hateable guy who at first you kind of think is a harmless doofus, but then slowly is revealed to be, again, the most evil character in the whole story. This guy murders this reporter, but when that happens, it basically makes him the general because he killed someone. And now he's forcing the issue with Brainiac. And Brainiac's like, what the fuck do I do? I'm going to have to like kill Kryptonians. uh-oh. But then the key moment is that Zod figures out that Brainiac isn't actually a fully complete artificial intelligence. It actually has big gaps in its decision-making abilities and its ability for independent thought. And the way it does that is by attaching to a living being's neural network and copying it, what's called a base mind. And then that person has control over Brainiac. Well, the guy who created it was Brainiac's base mind. And he was like a real conservative. Like he was like, no, we don't need to go to space. No genetic splicing, it's too dangerous. It creates monsters. And so that guy died like 100 years ago. And Zod figures out a way to prove this. And basically to cover his own ass, along with murdering this guy, basically reveals this to everyone and goes, Brainiac is not actually a non-biased machine. It's actually the ghost of this guy who a lot of you wouldn't have even liked. And he basically cancels this guy who created Brainiac, who actually was kind of an asshole. But he for Kryptonian standards, again, I have this whole Game of Thrones level alien mythology in my head from just long nights during COVID, writing this all out and figuring out the Kryptonian Epic. I like create a backstory for Krypton. That's what the COVID did to a man. Is it went from these videos of me explaining it here to a 2.5 hour long movie with 8 other actors, and damn, the things we do for love. So Zod basically becomes the despot everyone always said he would be. And Brainiac goes nuts and kills the scientist who was working with Jor-El, who convinced him to do it, and then goes for Zod. And Jor-El just barely escapes getting killed by Brainiac and manages to get into his house, which is like this big dome where Jor-El's been like secretly working on something. Jor-El is this very sweet, likable, kind of dopey, nerdy Kryptonian who really is so proud of the seed spore he made because he didn't do it for looks. He didn't do it for anything. He just did it because all of his friends who he loved, and he didn't really choose on anything. He just had this very natural experience and created this seed spore, and he's so proud of it, and he's loaded it into one of these ships. Zod at the lab goes nuts and takes some of his own blood and pours it into, he knows there's a virus, and then hybridizes that in the Kryptonian hybridization machine. When the Brainiac drones arrive, this thing spits out this gray blob that's covered in spikes, the bone just kind of growing out of it, and it keeps screaming like it's in pain, and you keep seeing mouths open on it and close on it. The Brainiac drones are these little bee wasp things, and they attack it, and it tears them to fucking pieces. So Zod barely escapes this, but this thing, the super hybrid, which comic fans will recognize as Doomsday, this thing works very differently than any kind of comic book Doomsday has previously. It looks very different. I've shared images of what he looks like. He looks almost like the monster from the St. James Infirmary, old animated shorts, where the big swinging arms, and he's just this bulldozing thing. But the Brainiac drones start fighting him, and to get the materials to make the Brainiac drones, the Brainiac is drilling the planet's core. So it's getting all this like fucking shit. There's earthquakes and shit. Brainiac is revealed as totally incompetent in a period of actual disaster. Every time you superheat Doomsday, he splits in half. So there's more and more and more and more Doomsdays. Doomsday is basically Zod's DNA mixed with virus and bacteria. And like the other DNA that had been in that tube, it wasn't cleaned. It was Zod's private one that he was using to do weird experiments with then people he would send into the Phantom Zone. Because Zod's big dream is that he would get hybridized and become like a superhuman and like be able to do all this crazy shit that mythic Kryptonians could do. Because mythic Kryptonians could like fly and they could do supposedly all this crazy shit. Who knows if it's even true? But he had this dream that if you found if there was a combination of DNA with some other maybe alien species, he could become more powerful and he could finally be like the real Emperor Zod. Because keep in mind, again, this guy is a actor. It's like, it's literally like if, I can't even say, it's like if Kanye West, like the current Kanye West, but not like that, because everyone's mad at Kanye right now, rightfully so, but like, it's someone everyone likes turns out to be the Antichrist, is essentially, I couldn't think of a universally liked figure, because that's where we are in the world right now. Oof. But Zod's just like an actor and a schmuck and a guy who's never done anything into his life, and then he randomly became famous by saying, like, I'm the original Kryptonian, I'm pure of blood, and people were like, yeah, we love that, we're pure of blood, everyone should be proud of their bloodlines, that's what it should really be about. He basically appealed to people's vanity. I wish I could say he was like a Trump or fascist or any kind of fascist type of analog, but he's kind of not. He's more of just an asshole actor, vain, stupid, really believes he'll be able to be turned into like a big muscle man. But Jor-El has explained to him like 50 times, that's not how it works. You can't do that as an adult. You can't hybridize an adult Kryptonian. You can only like do it with like a fetus. Fucking doomsdays all over the planet, earthquakes, tsunamis, flooding, fire in the sky from Brainiac drones flying left and right. It's basically a day and a half and most of the planet is fucked. And it's horribly tragic. In the Kryptonian Epic, ZOD'S Masterpiece, if I ever wrote it out, I have ideas that are very unformed for a number of Kryptonian side characters who I would attempt to present as important and then kill. They would be killed in this period. You'd lose all your supporting cast, except Zod and Jor-El. So Jor-El's hiding out, and he doesn't want to launch his seed pod, because in his mind, that's his kid, and he loves his kid, and he's scared, even as the planet is coming apart, he's scared to launch it out into a world that it wouldn't understand. So Jor-El is, basically on the floor, this slug alien thing in front of this rocket that looks kind of like, it looks like a rocket ship, but it kind of has an organic shape to it because it's Kryptonian, and they make everything from this weird, like, hypercarbonized bark. It's, again, lore shit. It's dork shit. I'm making this for the people who make theories in the comments because it all pays off in the other things I'm making that are cooler than this. So I wanted to lay the groundwork. In comes Zod. Now you have to keep in mind there's like lightning, fire in the sky under this big organic dome, and the rocket there, and they're on this walkway. It's almost like the Nightmare Before Christmas, like organic on this walkway. And Jor-El is up against and framed against lightning and fire in the window, but then also it's the big S. It is an S, even though it's not an S. It's, hey, the Superman thing. Hey, that looks like Jor-El's face. The animated Kryptonian Epic. It's an alien face. It's not just a symbol of anything. It's their crest, because they designed their faces on Krypton because they're fucking plant aliens and they look nothing like human beings, which is actually a big twist at the end of Superman Do It Yourself, which I need to explain at some point when Zod is introduced. But that takes place hundreds of years after this. In comes Zod. Put me in the rocket, basically. Put me in the rocket. I'll carry on Krypton's legacy. And Jor-El, you don't understand. Well, is that Jor-El? You don't understand. Yeah. You don't understand. An adult can't fit in there. It's meant for a child. You'll put me in there now, or there will be dire consequences, Jor-El. It's not too late for me to fire you. I fucking hate Zod. But Jor-El, of course, says, no, that's not how it works. There's not room for you in there. But Zod's just manic and losing it. And when Jor-El turns around, he goes, I'll get us both out of here. I'll figure out a way for us to get deeper underground. And he starts like calming Zod down. And he turns around, and all Jor-El's trying to do is reach to deactivate the rocket, because they need to go down there to get underground. That's all he's doing. He's just doing the nice thing for Zod. And Zod throws this little bead at him that explodes into fire, and it burns Jor-El alive. And he screams again and again, why? And those are his last words, is screaming the word why again and again and again in front of a Superman symbol that is now stained with his ash and blood. I should mention this calls back to an earlier moment where Jax-Ur basically asks Jor-El, like, are you actually going to be brave enough to send your seed pod? Because everybody only gets one. You know, are you the one who's going to send your seed? And Jor-El says it's his dream that his son would, you know, his child would reach the stars and go to new planets and bring them the hope and love that Brainiac will bring to the world and that the Kryptonian race represents. But then in the moment, he chickened out. He was too scared to pull the thing, and now he got burned alive for it. And he's laying there looking up at the rocket, twitching, all fucked up, realizing his son is going to die here with him. And Zod then, without answering why, watches as the fire creeps onto the rocket and burns a portion of the rocket, damaging it. Now, there were two portions of this rocket, one that hybridizes an egg, and then a second one that is a mini Brainiac that chooses a base mind, probably the mind of the child, the hybridized child, ideally, and then uses Kryptonian technology, which can create big structures, like bark, but big structures out of whatever they land in. They can build giant structures just naturally using, like, science fiction. You know, they've, like, if it landed in underwater at the bottom of the ocean, it would build like a big thing there. If it landed in the middle of Antarctica, it would build a big thing there. If it landed in the middle of the desert, it would build a thing made out of sand. And it would be a Brainiac, it would be like a home base for the new Kryptonians. So it's basically like a baby with a camping set that is meant to go out and take on the universe. But the camping set part gets all lit on fire, and the guidance part lights on fire and sparks fall out of it. And the little egg inside even starts to shake it like it's going to fall. And Zod starts hitting the fucking window, the Superman thing, to try to make the egg fall. He doesn't even care. The building's coming down. He doesn't give a fuck. He's trying to fuck over a baby for no reason. He keeps going. You ask me why? It should be me. It should be me in there. That's why. Zod leaves. The building starts to collapse, but the firebomb damaged the guidance system enough that the thing launches. And it comes crashing up through the fucking ceiling. And the explosion from it blows out the whole house. And all of the sets we've seen in the Kryptonian Epic, all of Jor-El's house, we watch burn in the fire of this rocket. And it crashes into the gantry-way. And Jor-El, who's still like a tiny bit alive, just all burnt and fucked up, lands and watches it launch. And the last thing he sees is his kid get away, launching out into the stars through a cloud of fire, through the nuclear smoke of the Brainiac and Doomsday Wars, all the way up through the atmosphere, blowing past the green lights that try to stop it, out further, further, further into the stars, until the hyperdrive designed by Jax-Ur kicks in and it flies through space and nebulas. Part of it still burns, part of it's still all fucked up and coming apart, and then it flies until it's eventually in our solar system, spinning around the orbit of Earth, where it glitches, breaks, and deploys only half of its payload. It'll hang there in orbit for another 500 years before a random solar wind will send it crashing down into Smallville, Kansas. So, that is me having too much fun doing this, and thank you. And I thought that moment was worth dramatizing to give you a little context about our old friend Zod. Because he's a son of a bitch.